Welcome to the deep dive. We are jumping right into it today.
Yes, we are. Let's do it.
Okay, so I want you, the listener, to go to a very specific and, frankly, a very painful place with me for a second. You know that feeling when you've just wrapped up a presentation?
Oh, the adrenaline crash?
Right. Maybe it's a pitch deck you've been agonizing over for, I don't know, 3 weeks. Or maybe it's that terrifying conversation where you finally ask for a raise, you hit your final point, you stop talking,
And your heart is just pounding.
pounding out of your chest, and you look at the person across the table or the face on the Zoom screen, and you are just waiting for the verdict.
It is the ultimate moment of truth.
Exactly. And the silence stretches out for like 3 seconds, which of course feels like 3 years in that room. And then they lean back and maybe tilt their head a little bit and deliver the line. Interesting. Well, think about it.
The four most dangerous words in the English language.
It is physically painful. It's like the air just got completely sucked out of the room. You're sitting there frozen, smiling like an idiot. But internally, you are just spiraling. You're thinking, wait, is that a yes?
Yeah.
Is that a polite no? Do they absolutely hate me?
It's the worst kind of purgatory. And honestly, the anxiety you feel in that exact moment is completely justified. It's not just you being neurotic.
Because it feels like a rejection, but it sounds polite.
Exactly. That phrase is fundamentally designed to be ambiguous. It is the linguistic equivalent of a shrug.
It's the poker face of corporate America.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why we are doing this deep dive today. We are going to decode office speak. We've pulled together a massive stack of research on workplace psychology, linguistic theory, and negotiation tactics to figure out what is actually happening behind those 4 words.
And more importantly, how you can stop that internal spiral and actually do something about it in the room. Because there is a whole social strategy happening in that moment that most people completely miss.
I really need to know the strategy because my usual move is just to go home and refresh my inbox for 48 hours until I completely lose my mind. So help me out here. Why can't managers just be direct? If the answer is no, why not just say, hey, nice try, but this isn't for us?
I mean, it sounds simple, right? We all say we want honesty. But the research suggests that we, and by we I mean humans, but specifically in Western business culture, we are completely terrified of giving direct negative feedback. There is actually a psychological term for this called the mum effect.
The mum effect, like keeping mum about something.
Exactly. It was coined back in the 70s, and the research shows that people have this robust, almost instinctive reluctance to convey bad news. We subconsciously associate being the bearer of bad news with being bad ourselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so even if I'm your boss and I hold all the authority in the room, I am biologically wired to avoid the discomfort of rejecting you to your face.
So we'll think about it as basically a panic button for managers.
In a way, yes. It's a mechanism to save face. In linguistic politeness theory, there's this core idea of positive face.
Which means what, exactly?
It's our fundamental desire to be liked and approved of. If I shoot down your idea right there in front of 5 colleagues, I'm actively threatening your positive face. I am humiliating you.
And in doing that, you're making yourself look like a jerk in front of the whole team.
Precisely. So I use a buffer. We'll think about it. Essentially kicks the can down the road. It transfers the social tension from right now to later. It saves the social fabric of the meeting, but the cost is that it transfers all of that anxiety onto you, the presenter.
It's a soft landing for them, but a total crash landing for me. Because now I'm stuck in limbo.
Correct. And this is where most people get it so wrong. They treat that phrase as just one single statement. But if you really look at the behavioral patterns behind it, there are actually 3 distinct scenarios hiding behind those words.
Okay, let's break these down. Because I need to know if I should keep hope alive after a meeting or just start immediately updating my resume.
To do this, I want to introduce a hypothetical scenario. Let's talk about Steve.
Poor Steve. I already feel so bad for him.
So Steve has just pitched a brand new marketing initiative. He's super excited. He finishes a slide deck. The boss says, thanks, Steve. We'll think about it. And then, and this is the critical key, the boss immediately turns to the person on his left and says, so, Karen, do we have the budget numbers for Q3?
Oof, that feels ice cold.
That is scenario 1. The polite no.
It just happened so fast.
That speed is the tell. If you are taking notes right now, write this down. The pivot. In a polite no, the transition away from your topic is absolutely immediate. There is no lingering. There is 0 follow-up questions.
So the silence on the actual topic is the answer.
Exactly. If they were actually thinking about it, their brains would still be cognitively engaged with your content. They'd be asking about the timeline or the required resources or the potential
Right,
risks.
because their brain is still chewing on the idea.
Yes. If they immediately switch to Karen in the Q3 numbers, they are flashing a giant neon sign that the file on Steve's idea is closed.
They're physically moving the meeting along just to avoid the awkwardness of the rejection.
Right. It is rejection wrapped up in kindness. They are signaling, I heard you, I respect you enough not to crush your dreams in front of everyone right now, but we are absolutely moving on.
Okay, but let's play devil's advocate here for a second.
Mhm.
What if they are just really, really busy? What if they literally do need to think about it, but they also desperately need Karen's numbers right now because the meeting is ending?
And that brings us perfectly to scenario 2, the soft delay. This is where it gets incredibly tricky, especially in the modern matrixed workplace. Sometimes we'll think about it, is highly literal.
Because decision fatigue is a real thing.
It is massive. And in a lot of organizations, the specific person you are pitching to doesn't actually have the unilateral power to say yes. They have to ask their boss, or run it by finance, or clear it with legal. They are structurally paralyzed.
So how does Steve, or how do I, in real life, tell the difference between a polite no and a soft delay? Yeah. Because in both of those cases, they definitely aren't saying yes.
You have to look closely at the visual cues. And I don't just mean checking to see if they're smiling at you. I mean, are they actively working?
Working, like doing other work.
No, working on your pitch. Are they taking notes? In the corporate world, if it isn't written down, it simply doesn't exist. If Steve finishes his pitch and the boss just nods and stares blankly, that's a no. But if the boss is actively scribbling in a notebook or typing intensely into a laptop or marking up the physical handout, that is a commitment of energy.
That's such a great point. Writing takes effort. If they're feeling lazy about the idea, they aren't buying it.
Exactly. Energy equals interest. And in our remote work environment, you have to learn to read digital body language.
Oh, this is huge. Because half the time these days, I'm pitching my heart out to a grid of black boxes on Zoom.
If you're on Zoom, watch the mute button like a hawk. If someone unmutes their microphone while you were talking, even if they don't say a single word yet, that is a massive engagement signal. They are preparing to enter the arena.
They're leaning in, digitally speaking.
Yes. Also, look at the chat function. Are they messaging each other? If you see eyes darting to the side of the screen and suppressed smiles, they might just be roasting you on Slack. But if they are looking directly at the camera or looking closely at your shared slides and they ask clarifying questions after they say, we'll think about it, you are very much in the game.
So questions are the ultimate lifeline. If they ask a specific question about how we'd implement it, that means they're mentally trying to make it work in their head.
Precisely. Curiosity is the absolute antidote to rejection.
Okay, so we have the polite no, which is characterized by the quick pivot, and we have the soft delay, characterized by note-taking and engagement. But you mentioned a third scenario earlier that honestly terrified me. You said sometimes it's a test.
Scenario 3, the confidence test. And this is the one that trips up the most people by far.
Why on earth would a manager test you like that? That feels really manipulative. Just tell me if the idea is good.
I know it feels manipulative, but from a management perspective, it's really about risk aversion. Let's say Steve pitches a really bold, highly expensive idea. The manager might actually love it, but they are sitting there thinking, is Steve actually capable of pulling this massive project off? Does he genuinely believe in this, or is he just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks?
So they give him a totally non-committal answer just to see if he folds under pressure.
Yes, it's a stress test. There is a well-documented psychological concept called the halo effect. If you project high confidence, people naturally tend to assume you also have high competence. If the boss says, interesting, we'll think about it, and Steve immediately says, okay, thanks, and physically shrinks down into his chair.
Steve failed the test.
He completely failed. He just signaled that he doesn't even believe in his own idea enough to fight for it for 5 seconds. So why should the boss risk a huge chunk of their budget on it?
That is legitimately diabolical. But I get it. They want to see if you have some grit.
They want to see if you are going to act like a partner or a subordinate. A subordinate takes the maybe and quietly leaves the room. A partner pushes back, respectfully, of course, because they deeply care about the actual outcome of the business.
Okay, but let's be real. This is a dangerous tightrope to walk. If I push back on a no, I look like the completely oblivious, annoying person who can't take a hint. But if I don't push back on a confidence test, I look incredibly weak. How do you actually navigate that without making your boss mad or getting fired?
That's the million-dollar question. You need a specific toolkit of tactical responses. You absolutely cannot just wing this in the moment.
Okay, give us the scripts. Steve is standing there. The boss just dropped the "we'll think about it" line. What exactly comes out of his mouth next?
The absolute worst thing he can do is just say, okay, and walk away. That is passively accepting the ambiguity. You need to use a psychological technique called labeling. This actually comes from hostage negotiation. Chris Voss talks extensively about this.
Like hostage negotiation. We're just trying to get a Q3 marketing budget approved.
The underlying human psychology is exactly the same. You want to label the underlying emotion or the hidden obstacle. So instead of getting defensive or arguing, Steve should say something calm like, it sounds like there's some hesitation about the timeline.
Oh, that's really good. You aren't accusing them of anything. You're just gently observing, it sounds like.
Exactly. It's totally non-threatening. If it's a polite no, they might just say, yeah, actually, the timeline just doesn't work for us this year. Boom. Now you finally have the truth. You turned a vague maybe into a solid no, which effectively saves you weeks of wondering and stressing.
And what happens if it's a confidence test?
If it's a test, they might say, no, the timeline is perfectly fine. I'm just not really sure about the return on investment. Now they have handed you the real objection, and you can actually solve an ROI problem. You cannot solve a thinking problem.
You're basically forcing the hidden objection up to the surface where you can actually deal with it.
Yes. Another incredibly powerful move in this situation is the negative reverse.
That sounds like a professional wrestling move.
It's a classic sales tactic. You ask a very specific question that intentionally invites them to say no in order to eventually get to the yes. So Steve could look at his boss and say, is this project a terrible fit for our Q3 goals?
Is it a terrible fit? Wow, that's bold. You're literally asking them to tell you your idea is bad.
It is bold, but psychologically, humans feel very safe saying no. They hate saying yes because yes is a firm commitment. It requires work. No is protection. It maintains the status quo.
Yeah.
So if you ask that and they say, well, no, it's not a terrible fit. We just have to figure out the staffing issue. You suddenly have your answer.
You've instantly identified the real obstacle. It's not the idea, it's the staffing.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
You are systematically stripping away the polite office speak to get down to the raw data of the decision-making process.
Okay, let's talk about the timeline aspect of this, because the phrase, "we'll think about it," inherently implies an amount of time. How do we pin them down on a date without being super annoying?
You have to invite the timeline. You cannot demand it. The amateur move here is asking, when will you know? Or when should I follow up? It puts them squarely on the defensive.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like nagging.
The pro move is to offer some kind of value in exchange for the timeline. For instance, I can pull those specific case studies together for you. Would it make sense to reconnect next Tuesday once you've had a chance to review them?
Ah, you're trading. I will do the work to give you the case studies, and in return, you give me a meeting next Tuesday.
Correct. It creates a very soft, polite commitment. And if they reply with, don't call us, we'll call you, then you take the hint, treat it as a hard no, and move on with your life.
Which brings me perfectly to the after phase. The meeting is over.
Yeah.
You did the psychological label, you tried the negative reverse, you got a vague timeline. Now you're just sitting back at your desk. How many times are you supposed to follow up?
This is highly controversial, depending on who you ask, but I firmly stick by the rule of one.
Just one single follow-up.
One substantive follow-up. If you send a thoughtful recap email with the additional information you promised, and you explicitly ask for a next step, and you get pure silence.
And silence is the answer.
Silence is a screaming, incredibly loud no.
But what if they just missed the email? What if they were traveling or went to their spam folder? I feel like we tell ourselves all these elaborate stories just to protect our ego.
We absolutely do. Our brains are great at making up excuses, but 99% of the time in a professional business setting, if someone truly wants to buy what you are selling, whether that is a software product or your own promotion, they will make it incredibly easy for you to sell it to them. If they are actively making it hard, they aren't interested.
That is a really hard pill to swallow, because it just feels so personal when you are the one getting ghosted.
It feels deeply personal, but it is entirely structural. And honestly, that's the biggest takeaway I want people to get from this.
Yeah.
The mum effect, the awkward face saving, the frustrating ambiguity, it's actually not about you at all. It is entirely about their own discomfort with conflict or their own lack of structural authority or just their own overwhelming busyness.
So if I can just stop anxiously refreshing my inbox and accept the silence as a definitive no, I'm actually freeing myself up to do better work.
You are instantly reclaiming your mental bandwidth. You're voluntarily stepping out of that purgatory.
Before we wrap up today, I want to flip the mirror around for a second. We spent this entire deep dive completely dissecting how insanely frustrating it is when people do this to us.
I was really hoping you'd go there.
But are we actually the villains here? Because I am realizing, literally as we were sitting here talking, that I did this exactly last week. A vendor sent me a proposal. The price was absolutely insane. And instead of just telling him, hey, this is way over our budget, I said, let me run this by the executive team. And then I totally ghosted him.
You mum-affected him.
I completely mum-affected him. And I swear, I told myself I was just being polite. I genuinely didn't want to hurt his feelings or sound harsh.
But really think about what you did in that scenario. You forced that vendor to wonder. You forced him to schedule a follow-up. You probably caused him 3 solid days of low-level anxiety, all because you didn't want to experience 3 seconds of interpersonal awkwardness.
Wow. When you put it exactly that way, it's actually incredibly selfish of me.
It is. We routinely prioritize our own short-term comfort over the other person's clarity. Brené Brown has that incredibly famous line for a reason. Clear is kind, unclear is unkind.
So the real challenge for you, the listener, isn't just learning how to decode "we'll think about it" when it happens to you. The challenge is to actually stop saying it yourself when you really just don't know.
Exactly. If you want a healthy workplace culture where people are honest and direct with you, you have to start by being direct with them. Next time you feel that urge to say, maybe just to save face, try saying something like, you know what, this really isn't a fit for us right now because of this specific budget constraint, but I really appreciate the hard work you put into this pitch.
It's so scary to actually say that out loud, though.
It is scary, but people deeply respect it, and they will respect you immensely for not wasting their valuable time.
That is such a powerful place to leave this discussion. We came into this deep dive just trying to learn how to handle professional rejection.
Yeah.
And we are leaving with a pretty profound lesson on how to actually be better humans.
Well, that's the whole goal of a deep dive, isn't it?
Absolutely. So next time you are sitting in that room and you hear that dreaded "we'll think about it" line, watch out for the quick pivot. Look closely for the pen. Use a psychological label. And please, for the love of all that is holy, if you happen to be the boss in that room, just tell poor Steve the absolute truth.
Please save Steve.
Save Steve. Thanks for diving in with us today, everyone. Go out there, be clear, and be kind. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.